Hello and welcome to Travel, Nurse, and Allied Life. This is a podcast and a YouTube channel brought to you by TravCon, which is a huge conference that we have every year in Vegas. And it's where travel healthcare workers come. Over 1,500 came last time to meet each other, to get CEUs, and to also learn about the industry and meet some great exhibitors and companies. My name is Laura Latimer, and I am the host of a certain segment of this podcast that is all about the trends and the technology, so the future of the industry. And today we have a really amazing guest that I am so excited to interview. His name is Gonzalez. He has been in this industry of travel healthcare since 2000. I think he'll tell us more about it, but I think starting out as a recruiter and then doing many other things that have completely helped our industry along. And then today he's the CEO of Job Robotics, where we're going to be talking about the innovations and the technologies that they're bringing to the industry that's really going to help us along on getting submitted to jobs if you're a traveler, and if you are a staffing agency, massively help you with all of the data and the standardizations. So let's dive in. And hi, Ron. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'd love to, this is going to be great. So let's start out learning about you personally before Job Robotics, since you've been in this industry so long. So please tell us how it all began and kind of your journey getting here.
I'm a registered nurse by trade and loved working as a nurse at local New York hospitals. Then went into working at different area hospitals, but through a staffing company, which I really enjoyed because I felt like I was my own boss, making my own schedule, getting paid a little bit more. And then just by word of mouth and sharing it with my nurse friends, I started referring a lot of them to the agency I worked for. And I guess I did such a good job, they wanted me to become a full-time recruiter for them. Loved being a recruiter, enjoyed recruiting nurses. And it was way different back then. There was a lot of picking up the phone calls, come on in, come on in. The goal was always to get that nurse in your office so you can, of course, credential them, verify them, and get them to start working. But that really parlayed into me starting to love technology because what I realized, the systems we were using to recruit and identify the skill set for these nurses wasn't really up to date, or did it reflect current clinical practice in any way. And so we were getting phone calls from hospitals that said, "Hey, Ron, those nurses you're sending, they don't seem to have the skill set we were looking for." It really was the light bulb moment for me to say there has to be a better way to capture the clinical skill set, a baseline for the nurses we're recruiting. And that led me to leave my position, start a software company with a partner, a computer programmer, and I hired some nurse consultants to really write clinical job knowledge exams in different clinical specialties. Took us almost a year, but we launched as nurse testing, and then we became Prophecy Healthcare a few years down the road. But we sold our testing and assessment platform to all healthcare staffing companies, and first the small mom and pops, but then we started getting bigger clients like Maxim and MSN and Cross Country, and so it was really exciting. And then I exited and sold the company.
And I'll just make a note like how important that was for the industry. I know travelers listening to this, it can feel like, oh my God, I have to do all this testing.
Yes.
And prophecy is still like a big one out there.
It is.
But it's so important because we know our role as travel healthcare workers out there. We have to fulfill a need and get very little orientation and hit the ground running and see patients safely. It's essentially why we get paid more money, among a few other things, leaving your home and everything. But it's such a big deal to have a way to be like, look, this person that we're giving to you, we've done our due diligence as the person you've hired to find someone with skill sets to hit the ground running. So I think that's really cool that you saw a problem and then you set out to solve it, and then you did, and it's still a big part of the industry. So
it is.
That is just really, really cool and really important too.
Thanks. Appreciate
so you
that.
exited that, which exiting usually means you sold it to someone else.
I sold it.
Right?
I sold it to another company.
All
And
right.
then was kind of just looking around for other opportunities, and reconnected with a software developer that helped me create this concept a few years prior of consolidating jobs from vendor management systems from hospitals. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, vendor management systems are these technology platforms that allow hospitals to kind of load all their open job orders into, and with the press of a button, just really push them out to all the staffing companies and healthcare travel companies.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, they used to pick up the phone and call each staffing company individually and say, "Hey, I need an ER nurse." So we've come a long way, but this type of technology has become very popular, and there is an opportunity to really help the agencies get those jobs quicker, with less chance of error due to manual entry into their own applicant tracking solutions. And so Job Robotics was born in that it was able to connect to multiple vendor management systems, pull the jobs out, normalize the data. What we mean by normalize is really clean it up and make it look nice so that when we push it into the applicant tracking solution, um, it comes through quickly and accurately and efficiently. And so it
Yeah.
saves a ton of time for those staffing companies, those compliance peoples, and those recruiters who have to start searching for these candidates to fill those jobs.
Totally. Okay, that sounds so important. And I'm just going to back up just the tiniest bit
Yes.
to make sure the travelers in the industry understand these lingos. So you did a perfect job with VMS.
Yeah.
VMS technology, hospitals put their jobs in it.
Yeah.
Goes up to staffing agencies. Now, ATS might also be a new word to some
Yeah.
travelers. So, ATS is the technology that the staffing agencies have in order to keep up with travelers. Our
Correct.
data is in the ATS. Okay. So there has to be a way to be like, okay, we've got to connect the travelers in the ATS, which also, did the jobs live in the ATS for some people or just the
Yeah,
traveler
no, they
information?
do.
Mm-hmm.
The jobs do. Yeah, and so a lot
Yep.
of applicant tracking solutions have what we call job sync technology, which when an ER job comes in, through the vendor management through Job Robotics, we push it in, and now there's an open job for emergency room. Applicant tracking solutions are smart enough now to serve up all the professionals that have ER experience
Mm-hmm.
right there next to the job. They're like, "Hey, Jane, just so you know, we found 10 ER nurses that might be right for this job." And
So
so
helpful.
it's really
Yeah.
cool. It's
So
the
cool.
technology's improving quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we got VMS, ATS, and then you started mentioning some of the problem you guys are solving. So I want
Yes.
to really talk about this because it
Yes.
is one of the things that blew my mind the most when I started looking at other sides of the industry than just the perspective when I was a travel healthcare worker.
Yeah.
It is messy, this data. So,
Yes, it
first
is.
of all, VMSs. There is hospitals that put data into something to shoot it out. My question is, do all hospitals use the same VMS?
They do not. So there are many vendor management solutions out there, over 100
Hmm.
that we connect to personally on the healthcare side. So just imagine what's out there in general sector as well.
Wow.
But they're all built differently, but they do the same thing. And I think the challenge lies in how the systems are set up to capture data or data entry. Sometimes they're easy to enter data into because everything's drop downs and check boxes, and but a lot of them were built a while before that allowed for free text entry. The challenge with free text entry is, um, if you think about one person, they could enter the same job into two different systems and they look totally different, right? And so
Mm.
now, how do we, as a company that's supposed to organize and normalize and clean the data, identify that, clean it up, and push it into somebody else's systems so it makes sense to them? And that's the challenge that we have sometimes on the job robotics side is vendor management systems are not all the same. They're built differently, and data entry really dependent on the person entering the information. um,
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And
it
I,
does.
and maybe an example of that could be what, like ER nurse could be two different things. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you enter emergency room position in the vendor management system. And when they push it out to their staffing agencies, to the ATS, their ATSs may be set up to recognize ER as emergency department and not emergency room. And so there's a
Mm,
conflict there. And so what Job Robotics does is we actually create a mapping tool so that the staffing agencies are able to map their specialties to how the vendor management system set up their specialties as well, and that
yeah.
reduces the errors that we see on jobs coming through. But it's still a challenge even to this day to get clean data into the system.
Yeah, definitely would be, and that is huge. So then we've got all these hospitals.
Yeah,
It blows my mind. There's hundreds of VMSs to choose from too. Some of
yeah,
the VMSs, just a regular old who knows who human at the hospital is trying to say they
yeah.
need a job. They might not even know clinical terms, whoever's typing it in.
It's so
And then
true.
some of the VMSs even have the open fields you're saying. So they could literally free type it with typos, who knows what.
Yes,
And then all of a sudden it's shooting out. Now, there are a lot of jobs, I assume, coming into a staffing agency's dashboard or ATS system, especially if they staff allied health, therapy,
yes,
nursing, all the different nurses. And so if some of them are coming in with different standardizations, and me as a traveler, let's say am an ER nurse, we'll just stick with that, then the recruiter would have to type in every different type of possible way, including the typos, to find all the jobs I could match with. But then something like Job Robotics could say, hey, look, no matter how it comes in, now we can make it all say what you call it as a staffing agency,
that's
emergency
correct.
department. That's
Exactly.
a huge win for us too as travelers, because we want our staffing agencies to find all the jobs we're qualified for,
Yes.
not just the ones that happen to call it what you do. So I totally get that. I have a question about the number of jobs actually. So, how many jobs exactly are coming through at any given time into a staffing agency or through y'all's system?
Yeah, we've been calculating on average between 30 to 50,000 jobs flowing through the platform on a monthly basis.
Wow.
Um, and with a good percentage of them being unique positions, we do get some duplicates every once in a while, but for the most part, they're unique jobs that come through our platform. And it continues to
Wow.
grow as we connect to more and more vendor management systems.
That's absolutely amazing. So there's 30,000 to 50,000 jobs that come through at any given time,
Yeah,
each month, right?
each month. Yeah,
Each month. That's a ton of jobs. And I'm curious, and I'm sure a lot of other travelers are curious too. Many times we apply for a job and we just hear back that it just closed. And
yes.
sometimes that can feel like, oh man, this industry just baits and switches us. But also, I think there's a ton of truth in like, the jobs close fast. Now you're going to have incredible perspective from where you sit in the industry to
Yeah,
see about how fast they really are closing, and also how many new jobs are coming in all the time with this
yeah.
industry. So I'd love just kind of your it's I know it depends on specialty and so much, but your general percentage of how many jobs you feel like close each day and how many open each day, and this how much of the speed of the industry there really is.
Yeah, I mean, again, there are many variables associated with the job closings and how quick they close.
Mm.
Um, but if we were to use 100 as a number, I would say 30 to 40% close on a daily basis, with 50 new jobs coming in every day.
Wow.
It's really,
So it's really just changing
it changes that quick.
so much, where
Yes,
it's so true that a job could genuinely be open that morning and just be closed that evening, but then three more jobs came
for
in,
sure.
while it was closed. Yeah, that is a really
It's quick.
incredible, the speed of the industry. And
It
then I
really
know,
is.
in being in the tech side of the industry, you can see how tech is only speeding it up faster.
Tech is speeding up. We always say it's speed to fill. Everybody's speed to fill, but
Hmm.
there's so much involved in submitting a candidate. It's not. There's usually a two-phase submittal, and I don't know if a lot of travelers know that, but
Hmm.
it's a when the job comes open. Let's say it's an ER job at a position. Usually, recruiters off the top of their head know who's available in their bank that they can submit relatively quickly or available. And what they'll do is do what we call a phase 1 submittal, which is just like first name, last name, their license, a skills checklist, and a resume. And they want to get it in front of the hiring manager as quickly as possible. And many agencies are doing this. So if you think about the hiring manager, after posting the job, maybe within a half hour to an hour, they get 10 candidates that they're looking at. And at that time, they're going, okay, I like these two. So what they'll do is they'll send email out to the rejects, pardon the word, but the people they're not choosing. And then the
Hmm.
two people that they like, they send notes back to the recruiters or compliance people saying, send me their full profiles now. I want to see everything from them, like a competency exam, send me, their work history or reference, all of these things. And then
Mm.
based on that submittal, they'll pick one, and then they'll put them through the final phase, which is like drug testing, background checks, all that stuff.
After they're approved,
Yep.
tentative on those things
Yep.
coming through. Wow. So I think what I also heard there is like if a lot of these jobs, and probably especially if they're in an area that's a cool location or the pay is might be slightly above average, it can be within an hour or two or even 30 minutes. Like the hiring manager
Could
is
be,
getting candidates on their
for sure.
dashboard. So one thing I heard just for the travelers listening to this, because you're probably thinking, how in the world will I ever get these jobs? I think one for you to listen to these great advice of Ron to be like the fast submittal could be a skills checklist. It could be your name, your licensure, the basic things. You've got to have that documentation ready to give to a recruiter. If you do find a job on a job board versus you already have a relationship in your paperwork and with the recruiter, you have
Yep.
to have a way to give that recruiter your information very quick.
Yes.
Because here's what I also would love to hear from you, Ron, is the recruiter, let's say they even have all of the information about the traveler. What are they actually doing as far as the data entry part, the actual, what are they doing to submit the traveler from the time they know the traveler said, yes, I want to be submitted?
So, if the traveler has worked at this particular facility before and they happen to be in the VMS system, vendor management system, it's very easy for the recruiter to just log in and just click a button and say, these people are ready. Um, if they're not, there's time involved, right? If it's a new candidate that's going, they do have to log into the vendor management system and enter all of their data, and that's very time consuming because if they're going against other staffing agencies that already have existing candidates in there and they're already submitting, that's the time consuming part, and that's what's being done today.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay. So you actually like your profile as a traveler is in the staffing agency's ATS, but they have to get it from there into the VMS.
that
And
is
keeping in
correct.
mind there is over 100 VMSs, and each staffing agency might work with 20 of them or 30 of
For
them
sure.
or maybe more. I don't know. They have to actually log in to a different
Yes.
VMS. It's not one portal for all the VMSs. They log into
No.
that one VMS. Each VMS is going to be slightly set up differently. So they're going to have to remember which tab to click on, what that VMS has as the specifications,
Correct.
make a new profile. So now the traveler lives in the VMS also, and
Yes.
then submit them for that particular job.
Yes.
Right. So a lot of data entry. Now, in my mind, I think like, well, if the profile is already in the ATS, why can't they just submit it from the ATS to the vendor management system? I'm sure you'll have a great answer to why, but to me, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, why can't they talk to each other? What is that about? What do you think about
it's
that?
it's a great question. So right now, if you think about why vendor management systems exist, it's really to push jobs out as quickly as they can to agencies so that they can be filled.
Mm,
But I don't think there was a lot of forethought on the original architect of the vendor management system to think about we should also have another way in for these candidates to come in. They just kind of built it on the same platform without thinking about other connecting technologies that might be easier to transfer or transport candidate data back through. But Job Robotics is actually solving that problem now, where we're creating these technology bridges for ATS's applicant tracking solutions to submit their candidates directly from the ATS into the vendor management solution. It is a
Oh,
new technology. And the reason that nobody's done it before is because it's really hard to do.
hmm,
And it's time consuming, and there's a lot of mapping also that goes, because if you think about the type of data that needs to be submitted for a profile, there's documents, certificates, there's licenses, there's
hmm,
a lot of paperwork, as far as regular data, start dates, end dates for work history. So we spent a lot of time on creating what we call the Job Robotics API Hub, and it's really
hmm.
it's a place where other technology companies could leverage our API hub to use to move candidate data from system to system. It doesn't necessarily have to be specifically from ATS to VMS. It
Mm-hmm.
could be from ATS to ATS. It could be from job board to ATS to VMS, right? It could be
Got
from
it. Okay.
credentialing system to ATS to
Oh, that's
VMS.
really cool too.
Yeah,
Yeah. So pretty much, you guys are creating magic. It sounds like. I always think of AP. I always think of
that's exactly
APIs
right.
as like it literally always.
Yeah,
I'm like APIs. It's similar to like when I'm talking on a cell phone and I'm talking to my brother who lives in New Hampshire and I'm in Texas and I'm always like I just don't understand how someone figured out how to get my voice from here to there. So
yeah,
I just think it's magic. Tech
yeah,
people, like people who develop,
yeah,
they're like it's not. I think APIs are similar because you're literally like taking data from here, doing
yeah.
something in between, and it shows up here. So it's
That's
like a
right.
big old telephone. But that's cool. That's cool that you guys are, essentially magicians. So that's how I will now think of you, CEO
That's
slash
funny.
magician. That's really great. I'd love to talk a little bit more too about job boards because this is something
Yes.
that very intimately I think impacts travelers. Travelers are curious about, and travelers are frustrated with. And
Yeah.
I think they're not alone. I think companies are frustrated with them. Everyone wishes job boards were easier in general, but
Yeah.
I think it's also huge in the name of education for us to understand why things aren't always the way they are so we can have more empathy
Yes.
even if it's kind of not that fun. But job boards, one of the biggest complaints I hear about them is the lack of data, and travelers so much want to see the data up front. Let me just see it and I'll make my decisions if I want to talk to you. But job boards notoriously are missing data that the travelers want to
Yeah.
see. It could be they don't show exact pay, or even a very good estimate. It might be a very large pay range. It's like even a
Yes.
$400 spread, which doesn't give you good data, or missing requirements, or the start date's not on there, or how many hours, what shift it is. Things that you're like, why could you not just show this to me? And it can
Yeah.
feel like you're hiding information. Now, I think there's a lot to do with the data and how hard it
Yes.
is mixed in with how fast jobs open and close, those
Yes.
two things combined. But I'd love to hear from you some really good perspective about like why it is that it's hard, or non-existent sometimes to see the data we want to as travelers.
So it's a good point. So job boards, if you think about the data that populates the job boards, how does it get there, right? Historically speaking, most job boards are populated by people. They would just enter the information, what they get from whoever their client is, their facility, and they enter as much as they can. And I know through the evolution of the travel industry and healthcare staffing, talent, the travelers are demanding more data before they make a decision, right? Years ago, you didn't have to tell them anything. Maybe you can tell them pay, but generally it wasn't as much. It was just,
Mm,
hey, I have a job for you to start next week. It's at this facility. Pay is great. Come on in. Give me all your credentials, and that's the way it worked. Now, um, because of technology and the data that we are receiving directly from facilities through the vendor management systems, healthcare professionals can see so much more before they commit to a job. And so, again, just going back, before Job Robotics started pulling job data to push into a staffing company's applicant tracking solution, um, we also could push it into the staffing company's job board. The challenge was if the data that was coming from the VMS or vendor management system wasn't entered correctly or incomplete, regardless of what we do in the job robotics side, it's still going to come out incomplete on the job board, right?
Mm,
Unless the staffing company really goes in there and does work to map and figure out the pay. So there is a lot of work to do in our rules engine in job robotics that could actually display a really beautiful job posting with everything: start date, pay packages, um, shifts, who you talk to, what's required, all that stuff. But we can't make it up. It has to come from somewhere. So
yeah.
as long as the facilities are entering their job information appropriately, clearly, accurately, then we have a better chance of providing our staffing agency clients with a nice job posting. But it
I
really has to
see.
do with the
Yeah.
tech. If there's a free text field that we find a lot of facilities like to just put all the job information in a free text field, like ER position, 7A, 7P, ACLS required, it's all just one big narrative. It doesn't come out right on the job posting. It just
Yeah.
doesn't.
And I think we've all seen those kind of like blurbs in random places and you're like,
Yes,
"What is this?"
that's exactly it.
And if you see it as a traveler, that's how a lot of them look on the back end for the recruiters.
Yes,
It's kind of messy. So a lot of it is because the facilities are putting it in all kinds of different ways and sometimes in blurbs of paragraphs,
that's
or
correct.
facilities sometimes have completely missing data also that is
Yes,
coming into the staffing agency
we've seen
through the
that.
VMS. Yeah.
Yes.
And what do you think? I mean, this is a magic wand question, going back to pretending like you're a magician.
Yeah.
Who do you think is the most powerful player here that might have some leverage to help change this? Because it feels like the thing that needs to change is facilities putting in data completely and
Yeah.
standardized to pass through. That's not happening. Is it VMSs need to be influenced to change the way that they demand, not demand, that's too strict, the way they require the information to go in? Is it the MSPs who have more influence over the hospitals? Magic wand, who do you think is the one with the most power to maybe influence the facilities to enter these things better for us? Any clue?
Good question. I would say an MSP. I would say the
Mm,
the MSP because they're the primary, and they have some type of leverage with the facilities, right? Saying we're your master service provider, right? We're the predominant number one staffing agency. We want to make sure that the jobs are coming in clearly. So in the event that we can't fill something, we want one of our providers that are assisting us to fill it as quickly as possible. And that can
mm,
only happen if we have clean job data going to them.
yeah,
VMS, if you think about the VMS, it's just a technology platform that they're like, hey, we do our job. We have all the fields in there. If they don't want to use it the right way, that's not on us. They can't force them to fill in
yeah.
the right stuff. But if you can get some type of encouragement from the MSPs, kind of saying, we would like you guys to fill it out the right way, that would be amazing. But yeah, I'm all for creating another tech, another middleware piece that goes right before the VMS for job entry, so it all looks the same for every VMS
Oh
going in
my
and
god.
out.
There's the true magic wand. Oh my god,
Yeah,
that would
that
make
would be
the industry a lot easier if
it
that.
really would.
And I think you're right. You need to somehow want the hospitals, the facilities would have to somehow feel the need to add that layer. And I think maybe it's the MSPs that could start to be like, this
Yeah,
is so important to get
it
the most
is.
qualified candidates, and this is going to help you a lot as the hospital. But right now, I think the hospitals get a lot of ability, and it's not even their fault. They're using the tech given to them, so they're just
Yes,
putting it in however is given to them, just like anyone would do. But the
that's it.
trickle down effect to everyone else, it can be
It
tough.
is. It is tough.
Yeah. Oh, that's all so interesting. So I'd love to give you a chance to, Ron, in the name of this podcast being about trends, technology, and the future. Anything you want to share about where you think this industry is headed? Your own just random predictions, what you'd like to share with the audience about what you think is coming for the industry up ahead.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of attempts, I think, in the last few years with technology moving so quickly and mobile adoption just proliferating everywhere, everybody's just living on their phones all the time. Um, to try to connect travelers to facilities directly. And I think we were just a little bit ahead of the curve there because you still need contracts to get nurses into facilities, right? So a lot of these technology platforms had to convert to agencies eventually because they're not quite there. But I think probably in the next 5 to 10 years, there will be technology that will allow healthcare professionals to go direct to hospitals. And there's a few
Mm.
platforms out there that are getting close to that. But I think that's kind of where we're going right now is, and maybe it is the new variation of a staffing agency where they're
Mhm.
just, really focused on tech. But I think there'll always be a little hand holding involved, um, because some nurses or healthcare professionals like to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, what am I doing? Where am I going? Where's my
Mhm.
apartment?" But and they want to talk to somebody. So,
Yeah.
um, but I do feel that in the future you will see platforms that will cater directly or connect directly the healthcare professional to the facility. It's gonna
Wow.
happen.
Wow, it's a really exciting and I think you're right. I think everything that we're doing, that you guys are doing, and I see in the tech world is moving us closer and closer
Yeah,
to more transparent data, making decisions without the human being in the middle, putting your own stuff in, and a huge part of
for
that
sure.
is truly getting us closer as an industry to data coming in and standardizing and getting to go to a ton of sources one way. So Ron, like, you are a part of creating the future, and I want to thank you for that. It's hard and exciting to be a
Thanks,
part of
Laura.
people that think outside the box and say, hey, let's try to do something different or move the industry forward. And I think
Yeah.
I personally am just very proud of everyone who's out there, like, moving our industry in a cool direction with technology. So Ron,
Thank
I'm
you. You as
really
well.
grateful for you, and I'm thankful that you joined us so you could share all of your knowledge with our audience.
Awesome.
So everybody, Ron Gonzalez, it's Job Robotics. Can you tell people how to reach out to you if you want to, or how to follow along with what you're doing so people can know how to contact you?
Yes, I mean, you can go to the Job Robotics website, and it's spelled with an X on the end. As some people are
Mm.
spelling it with a CS, but it's jobrobotics.com. You can email me at ron@jobrobotics.com if you wish, and I'd love to answer any questions anybody has. I'll be available.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Travel Nurse and Allied Life podcast and YouTube show. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Travel Nursing and Allied Life. You can find the full show notes below or at travcon.org. Please help us out by rating our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a comment below or email us at podcast@travcon.org.